Hello, what's up YouTube? Ronix with it another tutorial, and in this tutorial I'll show you guys the easiest way to do your frequency separation in Photoshop. So this is not going to be really as technical as my usual frequency separation tutorials. So in this very tutorial I'll show you guys the easiest way to do your frequency separation, if at all this has to apply, if at all the model has a really nice skin, and secondly if they have nice makeup like we do in this case. And the image you're going to be using for this tutorial is taken by Prince Mason, and I'm going to put his YouTube link in the description of this very video. So let's start and we see what to do to this image, and you can see that the image is really looking nice and great. Hope you can see a model has that nice skin, and we don't have so much of the retouching to do on this very image. So let's first of all process the raw file, as you can see right here. So for the raw file I prefer to turn down my highlights, then I come and I turn up my shadows a little bit, then also turn up my whites just a little bit and bring back my blacks slightly. And after doing that, I'm just going to bring down my contrast because I want to put back the contrast in this image using my levels. So I'm just going to come to the clarity and I'm going to knock it up to around 5. Then when I come to my levels, I'm going to push my blacks in just a little bit. I think that is too much. And also push in my whites just like that. And as you can see, we already have a really nice looking image. And we have not done like so much on this very image. And after doing that, I prefer to come all the way down, and I'm going to choose the ICC profile, which is, I'm going to go with the Pro Standard version because I felt like the image really had so much magentas, and this is where we are right now. So after I have done all that, I am going to come right up here and I'm going to create a new field layer to do some little bit more of the color grading on the skin tone. So I'm going to zoom in by holding down Command plus, and I'm going to have uniform skin tones for this very model. And for this case, I want the whole skin to look like this part. So I'm just going to come all the way down to my skin tone area, and I'm going to get the eyedropper tool and come and select this area. And as you can see, the color range, if at all I scroll all the way down, you can see the color range for this very image. So I'm just going to come to the uniformity and I'm just going to knock it up just a little bit and pump up the saturation a little bit more. I think that looks fine to me. So I feel like the image is turning a little bit too yellow. So I'm just going to add some kind of magentas to this image. You can see to the right you add greens and to the left you add magentas. So I'm just going to add some little bit of magentas, and I think that looks fine and okay. So I'm going to come all the way up and I'm going to reduce on the opacity of my adjustments in the color grading process. So I'm just going to knock down the opacity, and you can see the before and the after. It is not too much. I think I've taken it all the way down. So I'm going to go with around 79, and I'm going to export this image into Photoshop for the skin retouching, or the best way to do your frequency separation in Photoshop without going through all those technical terms. I'm going to come to Image, Edit With, and Photoshop 2020. So the format is going to be TIFF, and I prefer a 16-bit image. So I'm just going to go to Edit Variants, and I'm going to export the image into Photoshop for the major emphasis of this very tutorial. So as it is exporting, it is just going to take a few seconds, and you're going to be in a magical world of Photoshop. So in Photoshop, the very first thing we may do for this image can easily be rather the cropping. So I'm just going to close in and I'm just going to crop this image to have the emphasis on the model's face. So I'm just going to crop it in a ratio of 4:5 or 8:10. So just going to crop in the image to have the face really have more emphasis, and I'm going to hit enter on the keyboard. So I'm just going to zoom in just like that. So you can see that the model really has a nice skin. So I'm going to do the frequency separation before I remove the blemishes, because for this method of frequency separation, we are going to need to be really accurate with the blemish removal. So I'm going to create the two layers as usual by hitting Ctrl or Command J, and I'm going to name this layer. I'm going to name it low, and I'm going to name the upper layer high. So usually the low layer is going to contain the colors and the skin tones, and the high layer is going to contain the textures or the outlines of this very image. So I'm going to come and deactivate the high frequency layer and select the low frequency layer, then come to filter and come to blur and come to Gaussian blur. So for this case, I'm going to make sure or ensure that I zoom in up to that area that has more textures than the rest of the image. So for this case, we're just going to go with this very area of the model skin. So we want to blur out or remove textures from this layer so that we can remain with the colors and the skin tones in this very image. So just going to start moving this radius up to that point. So you have to be careful with this method of frequency separation, because it is really a tricky one, and you may not get the desired results from your skin retouching process. So just come and move the radius up to when you have completely lost out on the details in the skin of the model, but you can still notice rather the facial structures in the image. So I think 5 is good for this image, and I'm going to hit OK. Then come to the high frequency layer and activate it, and come to image, then come to apply image. So when you come to apply image, this is where the magic is going to take place. So since we are dealing with a 16-bit image, as you can see, we are going to come and select the low frequency layer, and now the blending mode for a 16-bit image is add, and the blending mode for an 8-bit image is subtract. So you're just going to choose add, opacity and mask. Opacity is 100%, mask is not checked, and preserve transparency not checked. The scale is 2 and offset 0, and make sure that you turn on the invert option so that you get back the textures. And for an 8-bit image, make sure you change the blending mode from multiply to subtract. Then when you do that, opacity is 100, the scale is 2, offset is 128, and the invert option is not checked. That is for an 8-bit image, and you'll have the textures on this gray-like kind of layer, and simply come and hit OK. So after doing that, come and change the blending mode from normal to linear light, and you'll get back the details in the image. So just come right here, and now we're going to put these two in a group by selecting both Command or Control and clicking on both layers, and hitting Control or Command G on the keyboard, and you're going to open this group. So you can name this group rather frequency separation FS for that, and come to the low frequency layer. So this is where the emphasis of this tutorial is going to lie. So just come and make sure you turn off the caps lock key, and if at all you don't turn it off, your tool is going to be like this cross-like icon. So deactivate the caps lock, and now zoom into the image. So as you're on your low frequency layer, get your lasso tool and make sure the feathering is around between 18 to 22 pixels, and come and make a selection on the skin area. So just come and make a selection just like that. So after you have made that selection on the skin area, but before you make the selection, make sure that you're on your low frequency layer. Then we're going to come back to filter, blur, and you come back to Gaussian blur. So the reason for doing this, we just want to enhance the textures in this very image and have that nice smooth transition in the skin of this very model. So we're just going to come, you can see the radius we applied when we are creating our frequency separation or dividing the frequencies of this image. So for this radius, I hope you guys can see we had a radius of 5. So I would love you guys to cram this radius. And after you have seen this, you're just going to click and start moving this towards the right hand side. So just going to start moving. So click, left click on this and hold down and start moving towards the right hand side. So you have to move as you're looking at the image. So I think at around between around 14, we have 14.8, we have a really nice texture, and simply hit OK. But for those that would love to know the easiest way to know the right textures for your image, remember we had a radius of 5. That's why I told you guys to cram it. Just multiply whichever radius you may have used when you're blurring out the textures as you are creating your frequency separation group. And just, if at all you reach this step and you have that radius, just multiply that radius by 3, and I guarantee that you're going to be having the best skin texture in your image. So for this case, I'm just going to multiply 5 by 3 and delete the 5, and now type in. So 5 by 3 is 15. Just hit 15 on the keyboard and you'll have that nice texture on the model skin, and simply hit OK. So just want to apply this texture onto the rest of the image. So just come and the way I'm drawing these shapes, I'm drawing them the way a particular area is shaped. So simply right click and click on Gaussian blur, and it's going to be applying that nice transition within the skin tones. And if at all you feel like the transition is too much, simply fade out that effect by simply right clicking on this selection, and you can come to fade Gaussian blur, or you can simply use a shortcut of Shift Command F or Shift Control F, and it is going to bring up this little dialog box. So hit OK. So just come and apply that effect onto the rest of the model's face, just like that. So simply right click and come to Gaussian blur, and you can see it is really doing a pretty nice job while retaining the natural and original skin textures in this particular image. So right click and come to Gaussian blur. Then you're going to come to this area and you're going to do the same. So when it comes to a nose, always make sure that you don't select the whole nose as a whole. Simply do partial selections. So come to this other left hand side and make that selection on that shadow area. Right click and come to Gaussian blur. So when you feel like you want to add the effect on this highlight, just come and select it. But as you're applying it, make sure that you reduce on the effect, because it is going to get rid of this nice and beautiful highlight on the nose area. So simply hit Shift Command F or Shift Control F to reduce on the effect of the Gaussian blur, so that the nose doesn't look a little bit flat. So just come and continue applying that effect onto those particular areas. I'm just going to come and apply them right there. So I'm going to zoom out so that you guys can see the progress so far for this image. This was the image before and the after, before, after, and it is really not too much, because you're going to see the effect after we have dealt away with the blemishes. So just come to this lower part. Remember, skin retouching deals with the whole body in the image. So just come and apply the effect onto the neck area too and the chest area, so that you have those really nice details and nice transitions within the skin tone of the model. So I think that looks really awesome. So let's see the before and after for the skin retouching. Before, after, before, after. So we would love to remove the blemishes. So in order to have a perfect blemish removal, just come to the high frequency layer, and for this case I'm just going to use the clone stamp tool. I'm going to zoom into the image just like that, up to that point when I can see or visibly see every tiny blemish in the image. Reduce on the size of the clone stamp tool. The opacity is, so the settings for the clone stamp tool, I'm using the hardness at 0, opacity at 100, flow at 100, aligned is also checked, and sampling is on the current layer because I don't want to sample color to the texture layer. So always make sure you're on the sampling at the current layer because we are only dealing with the textures that are in the high frequency layer. Reduce on the size of your clone stamp tool by using the brackets on the keyboard. Those brackets are after the P key on the keyboard. So hold down the alternate. So how the clone stamp tool works, you hold down the alternate key and now left click on a clean area and release both the left click option and the alternate and simply left click on the blemish to get rid of it. So alternate, left click on a clean area and release both and left click on the blemish to remove it. So that is what I'm going to be doing for a minute or so. So I'm just going to clean up these blemishes from this particular image. So let me just do this and I'll be good to go after the blemish removal. So always take your time while you're cleaning up or removing these blemishes from the images, because I know so many people out there tend to zoom in and they tend to judge us by how perfect these beauty shots really came out. So always make sure to leave no stone unturned, because people are going to be judging you by the blemishes that you leave out, because you're trying to rush through the skin retouching process. So always make sure to really take your time to clean up or remove those blemishes from your images, if at all you want to be taken as a serious retoucher. So let me just clean up this and see what I've done so far. So before, after, you can see how clean and detailed the skin is for this particular method of frequency separation. So this is like an easier way to do your frequency separation without using the mixer brush tool. So but I will always recommend you guys to use the mixer brush tool, because it really gives you the best results and it helps you blend or even out the tones that maybe could have resulted into lighting and also imperfect makeup in those particular areas. So just come and remove or clean up those blemishes. So I think we are almost done with the blemish removal. So as you're removing the blemishes, always use Ctrl plus and zoom in and see if at all you have done any mistake or you have left out any blemishes in the images you're trying to retouch. So just come and clean up the image just like that. So like I've said in this tutorial, always make sure that you take your time while cleaning up or removing blemishes from your images. So I think I am almost done with these. I always call them stubborn blemishes, but at the end of it all, they end up giving up. So I end up being that kind of stubborn person at the end of it all, because I always end up winning. So if at all you're watching this and you're loving what I am doing, always make sure that you subscribe this channel, because this channel is going to transform you as a photographer or retoucher, and I always effortlessly rather give you this content that is going to help you like make lots of money and be better at the craft. So always make sure to even like this video so that it can rank higher on YouTube, so and keep the channel growing. So I think I'm almost done with the removal of the blemishes, and when I'm done doing this, I want to show you guys the best way to export a really sharp and detailed image after you have done your skin retouching. So stay tuned and you're going to be getting that resourceful information in this very specific tutorial. So let me get done with these blemishes. So I'm basically trying to get rid of or remove or reduce on the amount of textures on the model's face. So I think I am almost done with the blemish removal. So always zoom out to see on your progress. And you can see that we still have those nice details in the skin of this very model. So this is not a blemish, so I'm not going to remove it. It is more of a birthmark, so I wouldn't want to tamper with it. So just come and clean up those skin imperfections. So hold down the alternate and continue cleaning up these skin imperfections. And I think we are almost done with the blemish removal. And after I'm done with this blemish removal, I'm going to show you guys the other technique I use to do some little bit more of the color grading to the images I do retouch, and you're going to see how this image is really going to be transformed even more. So let me be quick with this, and you're going to be seeing how beautiful the results are going to be. So let's see a before and after for the skin retouching. You can see the before after. We have just used one method of skin retouching using frequency separation. So I hope that is nice and you have really understood about this method. So I'm just going to close the frequency separation, and I'm going to come to selective color and just intensify some particular colors. So come to the blacks and just intensify the blacks or darken the blacks in this very image to around 6, and also come to the yellows and simply add that kind of cinematic warm tone to the blacks of this very image. So you can see how nice and beautiful this is. So let's see the before and after before doing the last process, before and after. So you can even come and do the eye whitening, and I have so many tutorials about eye and teeth whitening. So let me just create a stamp visible layer by hitting Shift Alternate Command E on the keyboard, Shift Alternate Control E on the keyboard for Windows, and hit Control or Command J. Then come to filter and come to the camera raw filter, and I'm going to simply zoom in and now do the eye whitening. So just zoom in, come and get the adjustment brush tool, take down the temperatures to around -21, and since I have some greens in the white area, go towards the opposite of green, which is magenta, at around 61. Since I want the eyes to pop, I'm just going to put it at 4, the highlights and whites at around 4. And since I have color, I'm just going to desaturate that to around -63 and start painting over the white area to give these eyes really that kind of pop. I could even paint over the catch light. Hold down the space bar and click to move and whiten this other eye, and I can even make it pop even more. Hold down and come to the teeth of the model and also do some little bit of teeth whitening just like that. I hope you can see how this is going to transform the image. And now I feel like the image is a little bit warm, so I'm just going to come to my local adjustments and I'm going to cool down the image by turning down the temperature just like that to around -8, and add some little bit of greens to this very image. So I'm just going to see what works best. So I think the magentas look even better, so I'm just going to leave the magentas at around 3. And I think that is all for this image. You can see the before and after, before, after. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you guys how to export your images in Photoshop after retouching. Simply come to File and come to Export As. And if at all you want a sharp image, I would recommend that you guys should use this very technique. So format, I usually recommend JPEG, and resampling, leave the rest as they are. So just change these settings I'm going to mention. Come to the resampling and select bicubic sharper. And after selecting that, always make sure to select convert to sRGB and activate also embed color profile so that your image is really sharp and it doesn't change in color when you post it on social media. So simply hit export and you can rename your image. I'm going to name this Manson because he took this image. And now select where the image you want it to be stored, or select the location or that folder where you want the image to be stored, and hit save, and your image is going to be saved the best way, and you're going to be having a very sharp image after you have done the retouching. This is all for this tutorial, and if at all you have loved this tutorial, don't forget to give this video a like, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel if at all you have been watching from this channel for the very first time. And before I sign out, let me show you guys the before and after. So this is the image before, after, before, after. You can see how beautiful it has turned out to look. Ronix from Ronix Photography. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in yet another tutorial. And don't forget to keep practicing and keep creating.